Welcome to Psychology of Pilgrimage. Today I am joined by Torin Brown, who is the Pilgrim Officer at Canterbury Cathedral, and he is the host of The Good Way. He has written a number of pieces around heritage and the Canterbury Cathedral itself and his own pilgrimage. And so I'm really looking forward to getting into talking with you about all of these parts of yourself and parts of your experience that seem to have converged brilliantly in this role as Pilgrim Officer. And so, welcome. Thank you for being here, Torin.
Well, thank you very much, Heather, for the invite. I've been watching your work for a while now, and your name does pop up in various conversations that I have with people like John Jenkins up in York, and so I've been aware of your work, and it's great to be part of it.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I shall we get into? We need to show this piece of connection here. Do you have your bottle of champagne?
Yeah,
You.
let's start
So
with the
I've been
champagne.
following your work a bit on Instagram for a while, and then a few months
Yes,
ago, you posted about this bottle of champagne that is from Reims in France, and it is champagne, the Pilgrim champagne. And I saw your post, and I had an upcoming journey to France, and I thought, I'm going to track down this bottle. It was not so easy. I don't know if you have a good story about your bottle. If you do, I'd love to hear it. And then I'll share what my story is about how I acquired the bottle.
great, because I need to know who produces it.
Ah, okay.
I approach them and maybe get a few bottles to sell in the cathedral shop. But
Yes.
how I came across it, I went to Reims for a weekend because our cities have been twinned since the
I did not
1960s.
realize that.
Yeah, Canterbury and Reims. That was instigated back in 1962, I think, by Jean Tattinger, who was the mayor of Reims at the time. But since COVID, since Brexit, more often, with more reason behind that, the Canterbury end has kind of diminished, and there aren't many people running it, the Twinning Association here anymore. So I met up with the people, and the story is that one day, one of the association accommodated a pilgrim who had walked from Canterbury on the Via Francigena to Rome, and that pilgrim was singing our praises and telling them how wonderful the pilgrim welcome is at Canterbury. So they reached out to me and said, could I come over and give a lecture one day? And then I met some representatives and decided to go over for a weekend. And I met the town mayor and a lot of really great people there. They really spoiled me and showed me a great time. And when I met the association of the Via Francigena headquarters situated at Reims in the cathedral, they presented me with this beautiful gift. So that's my story.
Okay. Well, so I'm probably going to get in trouble for sharing this story. Maybe not in trouble, but I imagine that the Champagne House is not going to appreciate the influx of people that may be coming to get the bottles. Uh, so here's the story. I saw the bottle. I said, wait a second, I'm going to the same area. I'm going to try and track down the bottle. So I looked in the shops in Reims and could not find the bottle. And so I found the Champagne House here. It's listed, Veli Prodom online. And I had to really zoom in on your photo to see what the name of it was. So
Right.
I found where it was located. I happened to have rented a car while I was in France. And so I had the ability to travel to this small town, which is called Icoy. Icoy, I think, is how it's pronounced. And there are several champagne vineyards and the houses where people can go do the tasting. And so I pulled up in my car, walked into the courtyard, and there was no one around, but there was an open door. And so it was around noon. So I walked into the door. I fumbled my way in French to tell this group of young people what I was doing there. I also had Google Translate out. They said, "Oh, we're working here. we are not the owners, but we will go find the owners. And so a wonderful woman came out. She was on a break. She was having her lunch. She came into the courtyard and I explained to her, I had a photo and I said, I've come from the United States and I would really like this bottle. Do you sell it? And she said, no, which is, uh, which is pretty characteristic for a first answer for in French when something is not readily available. No. So I decided to plead my case a bit more, and I said, "I am a pilgrimage studies scholar. This is the kind of the focus of my work, and I've traveled a long way. Would you please sell me the bottle if you have it?" Then she explained, "It's a special label that we have used for pilgrims for this particular champagne." And she said, "And I will sell you. We have one bottle." So I said, "Thank you so much." And so I purchased the bottle, and voila, there we have it. But it's so special. And now the question is when to open it.
Well,
We drink it.
there you go. That's my dilemma as
Yes.
well. But I love that. I love the way from a flat no, you bought it out of them in the end. You managed to get them to sell you a bottle.
Well, I have found after being in France numerous times over the past several years that no to an American or maybe no to a Brit feels final. Maybe we don't pursue this more, but I have discovered within French culture that no is an invitation to plead the case a bit more. And so I decided to employ this bit of newfound cultural awareness and it worked. So I don't know if it's available for purchase. I imagine that with enough demand it may become available, but I sort of like the idea that I had to track it down. I like the idea that this was difficult and that it took a bit of research and effort and it made it feel more special.
Yeah, I agree. That's a little adventure you had there just to get that bottle, and it's beautiful because it gives you a story behind it. You
That's
didn't
right.
just go into a supermarket and pick one off the shelf, right?
Yeah, that's
So,
exactly right.
a voyage of discovery.
And isn't it that is also part of adventure and part of pilgrimage, is this idea that we need to go find something, that there's a quest there. It felt very on brand for pilgrimage for this story to unfold in the way that it did.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. Absolutely. The one of the most common reasons for pilgrimage these days, I'm getting on my surveys, is the word adventure. People are asking the big questions of life, and you use the beautiful word there, quest. Well, quest is at the root of the word question, so it is an adventure to find that meaning, to go and find meaning in those big questions, which ultimately are what about life, death, suffering, the human experience, the vicissitudes of life that are visited upon us, let's say.
That's right.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true.
So I want to hear more about your story, about how a person who is not necessarily involved in pilgrimage endeavors goes from a life of sort of the absence of that to now being the pilgrimage officer at the Canterbury Cathedral. And what is the pilgrimage officer or pilgrim officer? Excuse me. What does that mean? But I want to hear about your story first, and then
Yeah,
the role,
start from the beginning, I suppose.
please.
There is no template for this job, and I was graciously offered the role, but I kind of had to make the role. But look, it starts from a way back in 2019. We could go back to 2015. This is not a unique story of somebody who is in their mid to late 50s working in a corporation which suddenly has a financial restructuring and then is facing a round of redundancies, of which I was at the receiving end of that, which was very, very difficult at that stage of life to go and reinvent yourself or continuing working in that industry, because sometimes you might find that it's a young person's game. Things have moved on. It's very difficult for people to employ, in England, especially people who are of that age. And I'd walk into interviews and immediately see the faces drop, and they just think, oh, old man's just walked into the room. And so it's very tough. Now, that was 2015 or so, and I kept going quite well for 4 or 5 years with consultancy work and all sorts of different things. But, it's very, very difficult to keep the ship afloat, as it were. And it was putting great stresses and strains on myself and my family. And in the end, there was a bit of a collapse, maintaining, let's say, the finances required. And the vultures started stalking, and I had to, and the banks were chasing me. And so I had to sort of, I lost our family home, had to sell it sort of quite cheap and quite quickly. And the inevitable strain put on my family meant that maybe the relationship fractured. Luckily, my daughter was grown up and wasn't suffering as a sort of child, so she had matured and she was having her own life. But anyway, I found myself in a position where I was standing on the street with my personal belongings in 2 shopping bags, thinking what next, where to go. I was saved by some friends who were artists, and they had an art studio in town. And they gave me the keys. So I was living for 6 months in this art studio, surrounded by easels and paint and paintings on the wall. And it was a complete artistic mess, but it had a bed and a toilet and a sink and a kettle. So that was life. But no, I realized the only way I could face that was to walk pilgrimage. And I just packed a rucksack, booked a flight, and dumped myself into the middle of Spain without any plan. At the time, I kind of didn't really care. Not I didn't care what happened to me, but I didn't care. I just wanted to walk this thing off. And so I didn't plan rooms and accommodation. I just went into the wilderness, really. And that took 35 days. And we can tap into that a little bit later about, well, maybe now's the right time, because by the time I had finished the walk, I presented myself in front of this Baroque masterpiece of Compostela Cathedral, still with this great emotional burden around my shoulders of the what next question. I walked at the end of winter, so not many facilities were open. The weather wasn't great. The hostels, it was out of season, so I really struggled at times to find places to eat and sleep. So there was that physical, arduous aspect of the journey. This newfound aspect of Communitas, this really sort of deep feeling of being out of the mundane cycle of life, but experiencing these intense bonds with other people, which manifested in the sharing of meals together, the sharing of stories, and the sharing of accommodations. I heard some stories that were so tragic that it really humbled me and then put my situation into perspective. So I started off feeling very sorry for myself. Why, God, why did this have to happen? To becoming very open to other people's grief. And so by the time I reached Compostela, I was very, very in a state of quite despair, because the journey was over and I wasn't prepared for this at all. So I wandered around Compostela for a couple of days, completely depressed. And I couldn't face coming back to the United Kingdom. So I spent the rest of the year in Spain, but eventually came back to read a degree in theology. Now, this is funny. This is where the Camino leads you. It's a strange pilgrimage of life. I wouldn't have dreamed I would have done this at the age of 60 to go to university to read theology. But I needed a part-time job. I was financially very insecure. And then this job came up at the cathedral, checking tickets. Now, the job role was called a shepherd, and that alone made me wanted to apply for it. But so here I am checking tickets, and of course, I'm face to face with pilgrims arriving at the cathedral. And because of my memory and experience of how I arrived at Compostela, I was very sensitive to the fact that pilgrims might be arriving at Canterbury in the same state. And back then, the pilgrim welcome of just a stamp in the passport and have a nice day, there's the cathedral, I realized was insufficient. So I tried to change the culture. And I tried to ask if I could take the time to spoil pilgrims a bit more, really welcome them properly, take them to the 0 stone we have here, the pilgrim stone, which is symbolic of the beginning of your journey or the end of your journey. Offer them the chance to meet a priest for a blessing. Take a photograph of them, because I started this Instagram account, which it's been going for 4 years now. So I started to change the culture here. And by the time I graduated, the cathedral were very appreciative of the work that I was doing and asked if I could stay on and do it keep going full time. And then they granted me some space for a pilgrim office. Now, this is the first. I don't know, since Reformation, who knows? But at the same time, Durham Cathedral was opening a St. Cuthbert Centre for Pilgrimage and Prayer, which had a little bit of a wider remit, but still welcomed pilgrims. So this is an absolute first for a cathedral in England. And yes, here I am now running this office and daily greeting pilgrims with this wonderful um, pilgrim welcome we now offer.
Despite the catastrophic losses that you experienced and the pain in between where you were, let's say 10, 12, 15 years ago and where you are now, what a beautiful story you've shared uh, around community and the importance of hospitality and connection to other people and um, sort of I hear redemption as a big theme in what you're saying. And I'm also wondering, how did you know in 2015, how did you know that the next step, maybe not the answer, but the next step was to walk the Camino? What informed your knowledge of that at that point in time?
Well, it's looking back, it's hard to really articulate that in a detailed way. It was 2015 was the redundancy. 2019 was the collapse
Oh, I see. Okay.
because I sort of survived for that for a few years since then. It was 2019, and yes, I can't really articulate it. I just knew I had to do something, and I knew it had to be sacred. I was a religious person, raised in the Catholic faith, and I knew that it couldn't just be going out there to travel, going out for a gap year, going out just to sort of, I don't know, walk with no purpose or reason. It had to be something that I could carry uh, with me along the way there. And I'd had a breakdown as a result of the collapse, and so it was a form of healing that I knew could only come about through this religious practice, this ritual, to undertake this ritual of pilgrimage to somewhere sacred.
Were you involved with any Camino groups in your area? Did you have friends that had walked? I'm trying to locate how your knowledge of this specific pilgrimage. I mean, I suppose by 2019, it's becoming more well known. Uh, the pilgrimage numbers are skyrocketing. Really, by this point, they took a dip during the pandemic and are rising again. But I can imagine that there's just kind of an awareness in the air that the Camino exists and that it could be a part of your own transformation and healing.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It was on the radar. It's part of public discourse. People were talking about this Camino to Compostela, um, and so and it's funny because there isn't a memory of a moment where I thought, I'm going to walk the Camino. It's just something I did without really thinking. Yes, I could have gone to Walsingham. I could have, but I really wanted it to be a real journey, and I wanted it to be challenging, and I wanted it to last a long time. It was almost like an Abrahamic call, that call out. You need to walk to places unknown, to strange places, and to a place unknown, to be shown something or to be guided forward somehow. Not that I was expecting some great epiphany or bolt of lightning at the end of it all, but I needed it to be very, very meaningful. I needed it to be an inner search as well as an external journey. I needed it to be an internal journey to heal the pain and the wounds, but also to find meaning in what had happened. It's very, very easy to feel sorry for yourself. And I could have very easily become part of the furniture in a local pub. But feeling sorry for yourself can lead to resentment. Uh, and that's just the wrong path to go. And I had reached a fork in the road. And so this was the one I knew that I had to take. And I never lost the feeling that God wasn't walking with me, even though I sometimes shook my fist to the sky and said, "What on earth are you doing?"
Can you describe what it was like for you to be cared for by other pilgrims and for you to care for other pilgrims?
Yes, this was the part of the Latin word communitas, which hits you between the eyes and changes everything. Pilgrimage is a confrontation with the landscape, with nature, with communities, this sort of sacred topography that we walk. Um, but that struck me. First, one experience I had was knocking on the door of a convent, and this beautiful nun opened the door, and I felt like I'd knocked on the door of our old house, and my mother had opened the door. It was really like coming home, and that sense of protection and safety and warmth was wonderful. Um, I Another wonderful experience I had was I was panic buying food, and I had tins of food on me. It was ridiculous, the weight of my rucksack. So one evening I decided to cook for everybody, and at the hostel at the time there were a group of young South Korean Catholics, and I decided to cook for them. And this was a real example of how they're raised in this sort of filial piety, this psychology, this philosophy that they have. Because when I cooked the food, they couldn't believe that an elder was cooking for them for a start. Then I sat them all down and served them all up, and they were shocked that I was serving them. And then they wouldn't start their meal. I was carrying on at the stove or by the wash. And I looked around and I said, "Why aren't you eating?" They said, "We can't possibly begin eating until you have joined us." And the minute I took my first forkful, they all dived in. And then by the end of it, though, I cleared up the plates after them and started washing up. And they became very agitated, very, very agitated in a beautiful way. They couldn't stand the fact that I had done everything for them as an elder. And this one young man came up, and he was so nervous and so troubled. I gave him a hug and I said, "Listen, you're young, go out and enjoy yourselves, and um, just have a nice evening. I am happy." All right. And I carried on working. They all left. And then silently, two of them came back, one with a chocolate and the other with a tangerine. These beautiful gifts they brought me as a gesture of thanks. And that moved me so much. And then this young other South Korean lad and this young Japanese lady, I picked them up along the route. We started walking together. They started asking me about the crucifix I was wearing. They weren't of faith, and they said they were interested in the Christian faith. So it was almost like God gave me a little mission. I took these people along and I talked to them about our religion, our faith, explained to them the Lord's Prayer, took them to church in the evening to get an experience of it. So yeah, there was a whole stack of Camino stories, as I call them, of sharing that journey with other people.
And it sounds like you have taken those experiences and these beautiful moments with strangers who became friends or who became a fellow pilgrim, which is its own category. And you have parlayed that into your role as the pilgrim officer. What you were describing earlier about what you envision for people who are coming to the Canterbury Cathedral and what you want them to experience and the way you want them to feel welcomed and to learn more about the cathedral, but about Christianity. It sounds like you're really drawing from these moments on the Camino, and you're linking these two pieces of yourself together through what you're doing now in the Pilgrim Office.
Yes, without doubt, a lot of young people arrive in my office about to engage in pilgrimage, and they're of no faith, but they're searching for something. Um, and so I always think that the church, especially this cathedral, can be a signpost. When you've completed your pilgrimage and you turn up at the cathedral and you're offered a blessing, And if people are open to blessings, normally that offer is when the tears start to flow, or after the blessing. And people can walk into the cathedral, and you cannot help but be somehow moved by the transcendent beauty of the architecture, this wow moment when you go in, that sense of history, of pilgrimage history in the cathedral. So it's very much the case that they're not everyone people on a faith journey. They're people maybe turning to faith, returning to faith, or completely atheistic, but looking for something. And so this has allowed me to become very sensitive to all these little nuances, these little vibrations coming from people, these waves coming from people. And I can pick up on that and hopefully offer them a meaningful experience, which is part of that incredible journey. There was a young man who turned up and filled in my little survey. He declared himself an atheist, and he described himself as an atheist looking for something meaningful. But he wrote that my goal is meaningless. Here I step one foot after the other, something like that. And I think he wrote his goal is meaningless probably because he didn't want anyone to take the fact that he was walking to Rome seriously in any religious sense, but looking for personal change. That was his motivation, he wrote. And that's not meaningless at all. But it struck me. There's this young atheist man in his mid-20s looking for meaning in life, and he's appropriating. He's standing here on sacred space. He's about to engage in this ancient religious ritual of pilgrimage to the eternal city, to another sacred space. So why is he appropriating this Christian tradition in his search for meaning as an atheist young man? And I thought to myself, in this world of individuality and science and technology, what is bringing him here? Why can't he find that in the modern world? And so, yeah, absolutely. I'm meeting all sorts of people. Some people are traveling late in life in thanksgiving for a good life. Other people with such serious tales of bereavement and grief that breaks my heart. And other people who are young people looking for change, a crossroads, a path in life. Maybe the modern world is letting them down. This promises of studying, working hard, getting a house and everything is over for young people over here. And so, yes, it is. Now it's become a search for meaning. And have a thesis on this, which I can back up empirically with the data I've been gathering.
I'd like to hear about your thesis. This is one part of your experience and expertise that I find great resonance with, because I've also been interviewing pilgrims for, well, almost 2 decades. And it is incredible to continue to read the work of others and see common themes that are bubbling up regardless of the location in the world, regardless of the pilgrimage type or the pilgrimage site. And so I would welcome the opportunity now to hear all about your thesis and to hear about how you designed your surveys and what you found important, and also what you're learning from pilgrims who are passing through your office.
Yeah, I can run through some slides. I can talk through some slides. It started when I first got this job as checking tickets here, and I was beginning my degree in theology. I knew that I wanted to write my dissertation about the transformational power of pilgrimage. And so I thought, if I start collecting data now, that will feed me some scientific evidence to back up my thesis and my dissertation, which wasn't fixed at the time. I knew it was going to be about the transformational power of pilgrimage, and it shifted as it went along. But a very early iteration of the survey of reason for pilgrimage, I just keep looking across to the slide, saw that out of the choices, and it was only one choice I was offering at the time: faith, spiritual, cultural, adventure, there's that word again, bucket list, charity, challenge, or friendship. And spirituality is out here, right? Faith is here, cultural, adventure, spirituality, way out in the lead of everything else. And I thought that's strange because at the time, all I was being bombarded with was articles from papers and data suggesting that we're just not a religious country anymore. We have no belief. We're all a country full of atheists. And so I thought, well, that's really strange, and it warranted investigation. And I found something that said that we're almost on the bottom of the list of the UK public are amongst the least likely to see themselves as religious. So what was this spike in spirituality? And I needed to investigate that further. And this was the young man I just told you about. That really sparked my, when I got that data, I thought, right, here's the catalyst. This is the beginning of this thesis, because there's this atheist in search of meaning, and he's using a religious practice to do that. And when I drilled down in the data, let me read some of these quotes from you. We both feel it is a spiritual journey, though neither of us subscribe to any particular religion. I'm atheist, but open to a sense of the spiritual. Spiritual, but not religious. Spiritual, but not practicing. Atheist in search of something meaningful. Spiritual, experiential. A non-practicing Roman Catholic, but I'm very spiritual. I mean, it just went on and on and on, okay, these entries that I was getting. And I thought, well, that warranted further investigation. And yet, in the news, I was reading things like this return to churches or these new groups being set up, and the underlining motivation for those was a search for meaning, right? A search for a sense of meaning, which had been lost in society, maybe since COVID, but maybe for longer than that, I think. And so what I did was I opened up that survey to multiple choice. And there I found a bit more of a balance. So spiritual, cultural, history, adventure, hiking were all equal. And that set me up. That set me back a bit. I was a bit disappointed because I really wanted spirituality to still be out there. But I thought, no, keep digging because there was something in this. And I came up with this thesis, right, that spirituality is the leading motivation. It is this quest, this yearning for meaning in life, which people cannot find in the modern world. The promises of science and technology, of next day delivery, of doom scrolling for the perfect life, maybe proved to be an empty box. And so people are coming back to the old ways, looking for that sense of meaning. I wrote this analogy that we've abandoned the village well to go off in search for bottled water at the shopping mall instead, right? So, but the liturgies of the mall and market are shallow, which is, I think people can find obvious. So we're returning to the, Ralph Metzner's well of remembrance. We're coming back to these old ways in our search for meaning. So that made sense. Cultural and history, where I always thought that in this sort of postmodern world, young people and society were looking to sort of break down our culture, break down our history, reject it, smash the statues, and draw a curtain over the past. They're coming back to these places in that search for their meaning, this yearning for spirituality. I think this word spirituality is the only way they can articulate that yearning for meaning that they're looking for. Adventure, well, I spoke about that earlier. That's the great call, the Abrahamic call, looking for these questions, the quest being the adventure. And hiking, of course, in this climate sensitive age we live in, looking for sustainable tourism. People can have that pilgrimage experience in their own country, in England, because we have so many pilgrimage routes here. And this reconnection with family, with nature especially. So that was my kind of thesis, really, that meaning has been lost. People cannot find, well, Mircea Eliade in his book, The Sacred and the Profane, described religion camouflaged in modern man, because we can't erase what Carl Jung would call this ancient common property of mankind. He called them deposits of these often repeated experiences over millennia, right? And you can't just shut the door on those overnight. And sometimes when you do in the post-Enlightenment world, the God is dead era, it creates a void. And, things can float to fill that void. And you kind of have to watch out for what that is. And sometimes it's very new and very quick and immediate and doesn't have the depth of what has been built up over thousands and thousands of years. This veneer of what our civilization has grown to. So yes, that was my thesis from the data I've collected. Constantly, the word spirituality and meaning came to the fore. So it became obvious to me that people are appropriating. Now I call this the post-God is dead era, because nothing's the same anymore. This past 300 years of how people have been, this materialistic reductionism and absolutism in science has fallen apart with new discoveries in the quantum world and the age of experience. Maybe we are rationalizing and finding reasons through our own experiences, which can only be driven by emotion. And so how these places make you feel is very significant.
There is a lot there to unpack and talk about. I'm struck by the idea that, well, by the reporting of pilgrims on this very broad spirituality, and then what is underneath, what has been subsumed by spirituality is are these activities in nature, hiking, connection to history and heritage and architecture, family connections, and I see precisely the same themes bubbling up in my research across different types of pilgrimages. And I wonder also if we are arriving at an understanding of spirituality that may be different, that spirituality encompasses all of these other areas, that because of the lack of meaning, sort of this veneer that you talk about, that the need to connect spiritually hasn't left us. We're
Mm.
humans. And I think that need to connect with something greater than ourselves is always going to be present, even for someone who says, I'm an atheist. I don't necessarily believe in a higher power. I don't believe that maybe the earth was created in the way that 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 people who may have literal interpretations of the way the earth was created. I don't believe in that, or I don't believe that there's some bigger power that's driving us. I think the need to connect to something outside of ourselves still exists. And so we're seeking these connections in the past. I mean, that is one big theme that I'm hearing you talk about, that we want something that predates us, that's going to live beyond us, that actually places us within uh, uh, a continuum in some way, that we're not the end of the road, that we exist beyond our own mortality. I think is so important.
Yes. Yes. And I think there's a lot of modern discourse on Instagram uh, talking about those things right now.
Yes.
It's very interesting, and it's very early stages, and people are feeling their way around. But I've just been scribbling a few notes while you were talking, because that really ties up with something that through my studies, I was following a fellow called Iain McGilchrist. He wrote some amazing books, The Master and His Emissary and um, The Matter with Things. And I use his description when I talk to these young people. They're very open because they're looking for something, and they asking me questions. He came up with a great sentence. He said that even if, and I say this to these young people, even if you are atheist and you don't follow a religious path, you must acknowledge that there is something bigger than us, that it is creative. Look at the world around you, and it is evident throughout the universe. And what that is, as Aquinas said, most people would call God, but you don't have to. But it is that acknowledgement that we're not at the apogee of evolution. as human species for a start. But to think that we are the ultimate of everything in the universe, we know 2-3% of the universe. We know so little. And so that acknowledgement that there is something bigger than us. And there are laws of nature that dictate how the universe works. Maybe there are laws that dictate how the universe came into being. And so term it as that which created the universe. You don't have to call it God. You don't have to immediately give this religious baggage that you're trying to get rid of. Don't worry about that for now. Park it, but think along those terms. And they engage in that immediately. They can't get their heads around the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, these old concepts. So I try to think that we have to engage with people, same language, different words. That's the way we need to find forward. And there's another author called Karen Armstrong who said that we are meaning-seeking creatures. And she said that the desire to cultivate a sort of sense of the spiritual may be the defining human characteristic, because we've done that since primordial age. So that's not gone away. That'll never go away. And another thing that comes into this is Iain McGilchrist's work, because he's talking about the two hemispheres of the brain, and the left hemisphere, which knows 3% of the world. And it's very, it is very, we're obsessed with it, because it means we see everything in minute detail and we manipulate it and we control it, right? But the right hemisphere it attends to the world in a more open and sustained, a vigilant kind of way. But we're obsessed with the left hemisphere of thinking, which is this very detail. It's the bird seeing the seed amongst the gravel, whereas the right hemisphere is making sure that you don't become prey whilst you are looking for your prey. So it's very narrow, where the right hemisphere is the rest of it. But because we're so obsessed with this left hemisphere thinking, which is very atomistic, individualistic, detached, we build our world in that way. The bureaucratic, administrative world that we have built and we continue to build gives us that atomistic, individualistic way of thinking and attending to the world. But the thirst, the yearning for meaning remains. So there's a real clash. And so I think people are now realizing that the right hemisphere needs to be re-engaged. We need to attend to the world differently. And pilgrimage allows you to do that. It's the world turning at 3 miles an hour. Suddenly, it's not the blur in a window in a car or a train or an airplane. You're walking at 3 miles an hour average. Suddenly you see the butterfly landing on that flower, or the bee buzzing there, or the skylark I can hear in the background. And then you attend to nature differently. And I love this sentence from an author called Owen Barfield. He wrote a book. The book escapes me. But he described the medieval mind as attending to nature as if nature was a garment they wrapped around them, rather than a stage upon which they moved. And I think that's beautiful, because we look at nature as a stage. We strut on this stage. We manipulate it to our own means. But we are such an interlaced part of nature that it is more a garment that protects us. And we need to go back to that way of thinking, which only Iain McGilchrist's right hemisphere can bring us. Pilgrimage is a very, very instrumental mechanism, an ancient technology which gives us the way, let's say, of this ancient mode of what was once a mode of devotion, has now become a mode of seeking, meaning seeking.
And I think a mode of connection, and there's the word itself is problematic for researchers, isn't it? Because it's difficult to pin down and operationalize, so to speak, what is pilgrimage, what isn't it? Is the term wide enough to encompass some types of journeys and not others, or does it include all types of journeys that the pilgrim self-selects into and self-identifies as a pilgrimage, or self-identifies as a pilgrim going on a pilgrimage? I think precisely the challenge, the empirical challenge, is exactly the appeal for the pilgrim, because it is wide enough to encompass uh, all of these different experiences and practices in a way that allows the individual expression within it. I think a lot of people that I speak to reject religion because of n of not wanting another's framework or a dominant framework to be imposed upon the individual, and so there's a clash of sort of this historical dogma overlaying with one's individual ideas about what spirituality is, but that is cast off or can be cast off during a pilgrimage, and the individual gets to find this freedom to express spirituality in a quest and connecting with others on their own terms while also still being a pilgrim. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yes. Yes, it's not doctrine, it's not liturgy. It is a real experience that becomes so profound for them because they find that they are having feelings that other people, the religious, might see as transcendent realities. They would never see them as transcendent realities, but they are feeling something and experiencing things that they're suddenly realizing are probably the closest thing they're getting to religion without realizing it, or being quite open when they do realize it and not so rejecting because they're not being beaten over the head with the Bible and constantly being fed these things. The other beautiful thing is that in some religions, pilgrimage is obligatory, but in the Christian tradition, it is voluntary. I think that's got a lot to do with it. You go out for your own reasons. Sometimes life pushes you out on the road. That's what happened to me. I had to do it. Life pushed me out there, and a lot of young people, life is pushing them out there because they're looking for change. They're looking for a crossroads, what to do for the rest of their life, for the next chapter. They're young. They've got their lives ahead of them, and they don't really want to be on the rat race. It's a big world out there, and then and as John Jenkins in his new book, he described this quite nice. He said, pilgrimage is, if I get this right, pilgrimage is easy to describe but difficult to define. And I think you're right what you were just saying. It is very, very difficult to define what a pilgrim and a pilgrimage is, but because it has this liminal aspect to it, that von Gennep said this, and Edith and Victor Turner
Yeah.
picked up. It's this liminal thing. You'll never ever be again the same person that you were before you started. It's that Mount Moriah moment.
Mm.
That person is dead and will never come back. But you're
Yes.
not quite the person you're going to be. You're in this betwixt and between, the Turners called it.
Hmm.
That is and then when you add to that state of slight vulnerability, let's say, betwixt and between, unsureness, you mix that with this, well, two things. You mix that with this sense of communitas, these intense bonds and experience you have outside of the mundane cycle of life, which you can only experience at festivals or rituals like pilgrimage, where social norms break down and everything like that. But the other thing is that these people, these young people who are of no religion, are following these religious routes, though, will start finding themselves day after day after day after day, week after week, being surrounded, enshrined and surrounded by structures of meaning. And they will be inside churches, and they will be images, structures or paintings of the saint in their moment of crisis, or Christ in his moment of crisis, especially in Spain when they're very visceral and very bloody images. And so if you are walking out on the road because you've had a sudden rupture in life, something bad has happened, you see that, you meet the saint in their moment of crisis. And there is a link that brings that sense of kinship or sharing of crisis together, which I think subliminally will add to that another layer of that meaning along the way, where they might find something more in this weird thing they're doing called pilgrimage.
And thankfully, there are people like you in the Pilgrim Office that are available to help make sense either at the beginning. Many people are starting in Canterbury and walking to Rome, but there are others who are ending their journeys in Canterbury and get to have the opportunity now to encounter you and your work to help them frame these moments and experiences in a way that gives meaning in a new way, and maybe in a way that is tied to the continuity of their lives, and able to link this before and after piece together. Uh, I'm also thinking about how fortuitous for you that you happen to walk a pilgrimage at the same time as pilgrimage is on the rise in Britain and is becoming quite popular, and the infrastructure is burgeoning. And then within the past 6 months, something very unique has happened in that the new Archbishop of Canterbury has made pilgrimage central to her ministry and her transition into her new role. And I'm really curious to hear about your thoughts about all of this.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. From a faith point of view, I like to think that God said, I need you to do something for me. It's going to be painful, but just trust me and come with me, and took me on this painful journey, the timing of which is still to this day astounds me. That I'm here doing this right now at the zeitgeist moment of pilgrimage, offering something that people are finding profoundly meaningful. And from the feedback I get, the feedback is not TripAdvisor feedback. This is really different. People are expressing themselves and their emotions in such a profound way on the feedback that I'm getting and the emails that I receive from people, young and old. And this is a zeitgeist year. The King mentioned pilgrimage, the word 3 times in his Christmas speech.
Yes.
And then, of course, Archbishop Sarah made this amazing decision, an act of such grace and humility, to walk pilgrimage for her 6-day retreat, spiritual retreat, before being installed as the Archbishop. What a beautiful thing to do. Because I said in a little interview I gave, she didn't arrive by helicopter or carriage or limousine. She walked as Christ walked throughout his whole ministry, and had some. Now, I was privileged to not only design the pilgrimage route and be part of this whole team, an oversight committee, and work to arrange this and organize the whole thing with her team at Lambeth and with her chaplain here in Canterbury, but I had the privilege of walking with her for that 6 days. It was just me, the Archbishop, her husband, her chaplain, a lovely guy called Don Simon, who was looking out for us and for our health and well-being, and myself as Pilgrim Officer as Canterbury Cathedral. And all I saw was engagement with the public in the busy nighttime streets and pubs and outside bars of London, to the, scruffier, more deprived streets as we were leaving London. And the engagement she had with everybody was incredible, stopping and talking to people, and not just hello and a handshake, engaging conversations and showing care and concern for people, meeting communities on the way, visiting places of worship on the way. We had morning and evening prayer in churches. She visited primary schools, dog walkers, people cleaning the parks, homeless people. It was a real eye-opener and a wonderful experience. And pilgrimage, it's yes, it's an exterior journey, as I was saying earlier, as a confrontation and an exterior journey with communities and with people. It's also an interior journey. It challenges you. It teaches you things about yourself that you never knew, especially when you come to challenging circumstances and you find a solution. You don't give up. You keep going. Well, there's a layer of something that you maybe never knew that you had in you. And there was one evening where Archbishop Sarah had to go back to the House of Commons to vote on something very, very important. And she left at the end of her day's walking from 6 o'clock. We started every day at 6 o'clock. And at the end of the day, we arrived at the hotel. She was straight into a car and back to the House of Commons. That session didn't end till midnight. She got back to the hotel at 1 a.m, and 6 o'clock the next morning, she was back on the road with us. So that's very admirable. And at some times when I was thinking, gosh, I could really do with a break or stop for a cup of tea, I had to dig deep and find that extra motivation to keep going, because she had school children to meet at a primary school and she was not going to keep them waiting. And I admired her pilgrimage. From that point of view, it's about following ancient traditions, following paths, following religious stories, but it is also about leadership. And, that is the sign of a good leader, as far as I'm concerned. I wrote in a little piece for the Canterbury Cathedral Chronicle that for the first time in history, the mother church of the Anglican Communion is being led by a mother. And I thought that's a beautiful way to look at it. A former nurse and mum is now in charge of the church. So I think faith in England is in good hands.
Can you say more? I've been considering this archetype of the Great Mother for probably the past year in the work I'm doing around battlefield pilgrimages, but it keeps coming up thematically in conversations I'm having with pilgrimage scholars like yourself of other types of pilgrimages, more traditional types of pilgrimage routes. What does it mean, this idea of the mother in pilgrimage, but then also specifically, how does that speak to you with the new Archbishop?
Well, there are certain layers, let's say, for the more agnostic, atheist, wanting to connect with nature. Well, there's the Mother Earth. We always use that phrase.
Yes.
Maybe more of a Gaia approach. There's that aspect, which is embedded in pilgrimage. But from my point of view here in Canterbury, and from pilgrimage routes and the history and the legacy of pilgrimage here in Canterbury, we've come full circle. Because I was mentioning earlier about Queen Bertha. She's a very, very significant figure here in Canterbury. She's a Merovingian princess from the Frankish dynasty. And you can trace her family back. Her great-great-grandfather was the first king of France, Clovis I, baptized at Reims Cathedral by Saint Remy. The young women in those dynasties were raised to be very, very powerful women in Christianity. She was sent over as soft power to convert the pagan king Ethelbert, the Anglo-Saxon king in England. Now, there is the big story here of Gregory appointing St. Augustine to come over, very patriarchal. A man comes over and converts this pagan king. That wouldn't have happened without Bertha. Sent over as soft power, raised to do this, as all of the young women were. Her mother and grandmother before her did the same thing. And there is correspondence between her and Pope Gregory. So you might argue that she's as influential of bringing Christianity to England as Augustine, because he was then warmly received by Ethelbert because of the work that Bertha had done. And she came over with her bishops and worshipped as a Christian in pagan Anglo-Saxon England, and worshipped up at St. Martin's Church here. This is the oldest, most continuous Christian church in the English-speaking world. Has Roman origins, still used to this day. It's part of our World Heritage Site. And you can visit it today, and I recommend everybody does. But and there's also a gate in the wall here at Canterbury Cathedral. I go in and out of it every day. It's called Queen Gate, which is an abbreviated version of Queen Inn Gate. It's the gate that she used to leave the city walls to go up to St. Martin's to worship and come back. So we have Bertha. Then their daughter, Ethelberga, was tasked with the same thing. Sent up with one of the monks that Gregory has sent over, Paulinus, sent up north to convert as soft power again King Edwin, the Anglo-Saxon king. Now we have York Minster and the York Mission up there. Now, King Edwin was killed in battle, so she had to leave and come back down to Kent with Paulinus. Paulinus then stopped off at Rochester, and he became the Bishop of Rochester. She carried on down to Folkestone and set up a monastic house there. Then we have Bertha's great-granddaughter, called Ainsworth, who set up a monastery in Lyminge, near Folkestone. There's been great archaeology over the past few years where they've found her remains and relics. And then if you trace Bertha and all of that dynasty of daughters-in-law and daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters, you'll find this beautiful, like the roots of a tree, here in Kent, where they all ran the powerful monasteries here. One of which is still going. It's the monastery of Minster Abbey, the Catholic Minster Abbey. If you ever get the chance to go, please do. It's one of the most sacred places in Kent. And there was another one in Eastry, and there was St. Sexburger, who began the monastery, the Minster Abbey on the Isle of Sheppey. Right, so there's this amazing story, rich story of these powerful women who ran all the big monasteries in Kent. Even Barking Abbey, that oversaw them all, the great powerhouse, oversaw them all, was female run. I think Thomas Becket's sister stayed there. So we've come full circle. We have an female archbishop. We have a female bishop of Dover. The two rectors of all the churches in Canterbury are female. We have female clergy here at the cathedral. So it really is a special time. But now we also have, somebody's just bought online 3 pilgrimage routes that celebrate these famous women. One's called the Saxon Way, the other's called the Royal Kentish Camino, and the new one is called the Shepherd Isle Camino, which goes to Minster Abbey, celebrating St. Sexburger. So there's these Canterbury stories. 3 pilgrimage routes under the umbrella of Canterbury Caminos, of Royal Kentish Canterbury Caminos, that tell their story. So you can come here and learn about that story now. Maybe if you're here in a great Easter or Christmas, you'll see the Archbishop, meet Sarah, giving a sermon or meeting her after one of the services. And you can just be enveloped in this beautiful Kentish story of these powerful women.
I would love the opportunity to experience this. We were chatting a bit before we started recording and talking about how I had visited the cathedral in late 2001. My sister at the time, my sister and brother-in-law, were living in Folkestone, and so we had taken the day to go to Canterbury. And I was trying to recall in the lead up to this recording, and then even just in our early discussion, whether or not I considered myself to be a pilgrim at that time. It was not during the era when my scholarship had become oriented around pilgrimage, and I don't know that I would have self-identified as a pilgrim. And I am a little curious about why I didn't. So there was about a 7-8 year gap between that experience and when I started my PhD work, which is when I really got into researching more deeply about pilgrimage and how pilgrims see their journeys and what the kind of the psychology behind these journeys. But I do recall being at the cathedral. It was Christmas time, so it was dreary weather, and it sort of fit the ambiance. It was nice to see the cathedral and then come in out of the cool. I think it was raining that day. Come in out of the weather and then have this awe-inspiring experience inside the cathedral. And I wonder, it feels like a like an open quest to now return in a different way. Of course, I'm a different person, but maybe return along one of these paths and approach the place, the sacred site, as a pilgrim rather than as a visitor or a tourist.
And I think you will come back with a different mindset. What you experience, I've never found the bolt of lightning epiphany in my life, but what I have discovered are seeds that are planted that I don't even know have been planted. And it's subliminal and they grow without you even know they're growing. And it just comes upon you. It sort of gently enters your life. And I think that is probably where you were at when you came here a while back. The Benedictine welcome here is to always show sanctuary, open the door as if Christ himself were knocking. That's our motto. But you came in bad weather at a religious time, a religious festival, bad weather, and you came into the church and there you found your sanctuary from the bad weather, let's say. And there you
That's
experienced the
right.
transcendent beauty of the church. So that was an uplift. And so, yes, it won't be a bolt of lightning, but something creeps in. The veil, you're in a place where the veil is thin, let's say.
That's right. And I also remember being so there was a moment of deepened awareness that I was at a sacred site that had that of course I had read Canterbury Tales. And so there was a moment of recognition that I am in a site that had been written about and conceptualized as a pilgrimage site. Maybe it was more profound than what I'm giving it credit for now that I look back on the experience. Maybe I started to become in the company of pilgrims at this point. Um, I'll have to think about that a little bit more. It's definitely provoked a desire, though, to return this conversation and thinking about all of the ways that you have poured your heart and your experience into the pilgrim office. I would like to come experience that as a pilgrim.
And when you do, you will receive the pilgrim welcome that I give all pilgrims. I take personal time out of my day. I could be in the middle of something and a pilgrim will just walk in through the door. I have to stop what I'm doing and attend to them because I know it's a serious moment. Um, and I'm the same as you, really, because all of those years ago, I would have come into the cathedral without knowledge of this. But what we both did, we walked into a place where hundreds of thousands of people have walked in the past. You cannot help but maybe pick up on some of that energy.
That's right.
Um, but, but since I've been here now, I know of all the pilgrimage routes from the Augustine Way, the Augustine Camino, following the footsteps of St. Augustine, who landed at Ramsgate and walked here to meet Ethelbert and set up the church in 597. Then we've got the Via Francigena, our Archbishop Sigeric. All archbishops had to travel to Rome to receive their stole of office, their pallium from the Pope at the time. Nothing new in that, but he was the first one to document his journey back. And so that was the first travel guide ever written. Now people are walking that route, and that's Sigeric's route, a Canterbury story. The female people I was telling you about, these wonderful women in Kent, 3 pilgrimage routes for them. The walk to Becket Shrine along the Pilgrim's Way from Winchester, the old way from Southampton, down from Southwark, that the fictional characters in the Canterbury Tales would have walked.
Yes.
I've got 11 pilgrimage routes that I've written down because some I've brought in myself, and I've met somebody who created the St. Martin's Way, joining the 2 churches at Dover and Canterbury, celebrating Martin of Tours, where Bertha was from. So there are 11 pilgrimage routes. Some you could do in a day, a long day, 2 days, 7, 15. That you can have the whole pilgrimage experience here. And each of them tells stories of our archbishops, queens, powerful women here, and saints, of which we have many, many saints here in Canterbury. There's the relic of Thomas Becket, a finger bone in the Catholic Church here in a little shrine. The head of St. Thomas More is up at St. Dunstan's Church. They're raising money to maybe make a shrine there, to bring the head from the vault into a shrine. He's a Catholic saint. Can you imagine a Catholic shrine in an Anglican church?
I've talked to a few people. Anne Bailey is the one who brought this to my attention.
Right.
I think we recorded an episode maybe a year ago. I am shocked by this. It is so fascinating to me that this is unfolding.
I think it's wonderful. And I've been telling people for ages, we need a second shrine in Canterbury. And then we'll be like Walsingham. And it can only be good for, well, listen, without being too mercenary for tourism, but it's more than that. It's profoundly good for people who have the desire, the yearning to come to relics and shrines, because there they see these places of transcendent realities, where the veil is thin, where something did connect on a space on the earth, some form of divinity, something happened to create that sacred topography, as I call it. It's a lot more meaningful than just coming to see an antiquity.
That's right.
And of course, pilgrimage is all about maybe walking towards a shrine. It's as important. The journey is as important as the destination, but the destination has to be some kind of shrine of significant meaning. So I think it's going to be a great when they eventually do it.
It seems like your life's purpose has become apparent, and you will be busy for the rest of your life, probably busier than you ever thought possible. What are some of the ideas that you have been mulling over, and what inspires you about your role as the pilgrim officer?
There are several aspects to that, one of which when the new dean arrived, Dean David Monteith, and there was a new team installed here, a senior leadership team. And they wrote a strategy for the cathedral. And the first or second line of that strategy was to make Canterbury Cathedral the premier site for pilgrimage in the United Kingdom. And once you write that down, when you articulate that, well, that's a challenge. That's a big thing to accomplish, but I knew I could be part of that and help deliver that and create that, because we have such the heritage and legacy of pilgrimage here has given us a surfeit of treasures. Eastbridge Hospital is in the High Street, and a medieval gem, untouched, place that was specifically open for poor pilgrims to stay one night only. You slept in the basement on a bed of straw. You were fed up in the refectory, and you had a worship up in the chapel on the top floor. It's the most wonderful place. We have the former leper hospital for sick pilgrims suffering from leprosy up at Harbledown. We have Lanfranc's St. John's almshouses here, untouched medieval gem. Some of it, the refectory. And the cathedral, obviously, was the great place for the shrine of Becket. And the saints that we've had here, the great theologian, St. Anselm, St. Alphege, again, martyred and an archbishop killed. So yes, that strategy is fulfillable because we have the history here. But it's just, instead of all these stories being siloed, it's pilgrimage is the golden thread that brings them all together. We also have Spain on our doorstep. We have a scallop shell carved in the wood of the wicket gate here. We have scallop shells on the ceiling of the Christchurch Gate. The Camino Inglés would have passed through here, pilgrims walking down through East Anglia, Southwark, Rochester, Canterbury to Dover or Sandwich, or even Hythe to sail to Compostela, or across to France to carry on going. So we have an incredible amount of pilgrimage routes and history here. And so, yes, there is that aspect of it. So part of that vision, part of that goal, those ideas I'm having are to bring those all together in some meaningful way to say yes. And then also to reach out. I've been to Reims. We've started working together with the cathedral there. This week, I'm talking to Arras Cathedral. I've reached out to the Galician government in Compostela to try and get a Spanish muteira here, a waymarker for Spain here. So I'm pushing that out to be the premier site for pilgrimage in Europe, but let's not run away with ourselves. So there is that overarching thing. That's the goal, the project-led goal. But there is something more profound than that, which is to offer sanctuary, spiritual, a virtual hug, a spiritual welcome home, or a spiritual send-off of Buen Camino. Go well. We're praying for you. We're thinking of you. So many people get in touch to say that the pilgrim welcome at the cathedral was the best part of their pilgrimage. And that to me is mission accomplished. I give a talk. I start this talk with a slide that was sent to me saying, can I just fetch it and read it to you? Yes, the constable greeted me at the gate with warmth, understanding, and empathy. I felt rewarded, accepted at the end of my emotional journey. Well, we have constables here, and some people don't like coming to cathedrals to see police. And this was out of hours. And talking about changing the culture here, when you empower people to follow their instincts are largely good. And our constables are wonderful, wonderful. They look like tough hombres, but men and women, but they are gentle and the sweetest people. Now, this was out of hours. A pilgrim arrived late. The cathedral was closed. And yet, look how they expressed themselves. They were greeted with warmth, understanding, and empathy. And they felt rewarded and accepted as part of this family because it is an emotional journey. They do all the things that I do. They bring them in. They've got the key to my office. They give them the stamp, the pilgrim bookmark. They write the names of the pilgrim stone. They take them in the pilgrim book. They take them to the pilgrim stone. They ask if they would like a blessing. They tell them everything they need to know. And so, and some of the feedback that I get, as I was saying earlier, and some of the feelings that people express, that's it for me. The young people who come here as atheists who are looking for change and meaning in life and then contact me and said, wow, what you told me, that bit that you told me about a liminal journey and I'm yet to become the person that I'm going to be, or something like that bit about there is something bigger than us. It is creative. We have to acknowledge that. Those little things, they write to me and they say that has really struck with me. And now actually, I'm seeing that there is value in faith. There's value in religion. I can understand it now. And I went to church the other day and sat at the back. I'm so overwhelmed with the past few years' responses that I'm getting. And it's not me blowing my own trumpet. This isn't about me. It's about the cathedral. And it's about the team that are now, because it's not me always mentioned. It's the clergy, it's the volunteers, it's the visitor experience people at the front gate when I'm away on holiday. The mission still goes on. And that to me is that important, just to keep driving that, to keep looking how we can keep improving on that and offer more, maybe in the way of accommodation at some point down the line, but maybe have a bigger project here, maybe to be a bigger signpost for that yearning for meaning.
You are talking about some of these ideas and the feedback you're getting and your encounters with pilgrims on a podcast called The Good Way, which I'd like to link at the last part or at the end of our episode. Can you say a bit more about what you are doing on the podcast and how you see this supporting the work of the cathedral?
Yes, because my background has been in broadcast television and film, so I'm kind of been used to production and recording things of some description. And so I realized that the way to push out this mission here, to drive the mission here very early on, was to not only create some great PR, which we did, we picked up on by some good press internationally, that Canterbury Cathedral has appointed its first Pilgrim Officer, and then the Pilgrim Office. But I also knew in order to drive that forward and to maintain that dialogue and narrative, I needed to utilize the social media platforms. And so podcast is just one of those. But I also wanted to hear other people's voices. Now, I've only recorded 6, I think, episodes so far. And my intention was to have a much broader range and depth. But anyway, we're 1 year in. We're 16 months in as Pilgrim Officer and 6 months of the Pilgrim Office. And a lot of things have taken up my time, and the pilgrimage with the Archbishop took up a lot of time. That's not an excuse. But where do I want that to go? I started by talking to people who's probably were quite prominent names here in Canterbury or locally, or had great pilgrimage experiences themselves. The first episode was with Sandy Brown, who wrote the guidebooks, the Cicerone guidebooks, and is one of the most beloved names in the Via Francigena. Everyone knows and loves him, this lovely American chap. And he found me out very early in the day. He heard what I was doing there when I first started, checking tickets and welcoming pilgrims. And he came to seek me out, and he gave me his blessing and support, and he's been incredibly supportive and singing our praises right from the very beginning. So he had to be my first episode. And since then, I've talked to other people, and I do want to hear more pilgrim voices. Part of the Pilgrim podcast was not just to talk in the studio, because they allow me to use the podcast studio in the university. So it was always a physical getting together around a table. I now know that that's not essential. And then I had it in several parts. And one part was I walked the first leg of the Via Francigena from here to Patrickspawn and just recorded my thoughts along the way. And a lot of people came back and said, that was really good. We want to hear more of that kind of thing. And then I recorded my experience being in Spain of the Semana Santa. And a lot of people are saying they like that live reportage, a journalistic approach. Yeah, that's more, I want to do more of that and walk with pilgrims for an hour and just record a conversation.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Well, I am so grateful for your time today and for the depth of experience that you've shared with me and listeners and viewers. It is not a small task to bring your full self to a conversation, especially a virtual conversation. And I really appreciate that you did this with me. And I'm really looking forward to coming to Canterbury, to being welcomed in the Pilgrim Office, and to being on pilgrimage in Kent. It sounds fantastic, and I have a lot to think about from our conversation, and definitely a lot to plan for in the future.
Well, that's brilliant. And I can't wait to see you. And I really will make sure I'm here and physically walk you through the Pilgrim Welcome, take you to see the stained glass windows that translate the stories of pilgrims that Benedict wrote in 1171, places you at the heart of pilgrimage here, show you some pilgrimage graffiti carved into the walls. It'll be wonderful to meet you and have the chance to show you that. And thank you for the opportunity. For me, it was, wow, I've been invited onto Heather Warfield's podcast because you're a name. Your podcast to me is quite famous and great and great. I've been following what you're doing, so to be invited to be part of it was a privilege and a wonderful opportunity for me. So thank you very much, and it just is testament to your skills and your wonderful nature as a host to draw out these things with people. So it's been very relaxed, really wonderfully informative. And I look forward to meeting you in person.